massive movements that changes everything. Eric Trump met with Michael Saylor at Donald Trump's villa, and they confirmed that they talked about Bitcoin there. There's now speculation online that this significantly increases the chances of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Michael Saylor has also announced that he might support Donald Trump and his team in an advisory role, if there's demand for it. Michael Saylor has repeatedly advocated that the US should even sell gold to buy Bitcoin. And now the meeting is taking place here between the Trump party and Michael Saylor. This is ultra bullish and could change everything here. And the signs for a strategic Bitcoin reserve have increased even more. We look at the background and what this means now. Also, we see that today the FTX payouts are starting. That means we have new massive capital that will flow into Bitcoin over the next few days, over the next 60 days. And at the same time, we have the largest sell-off at Blackrock ever. The Bitcoin ETFs have sold off more capital than ever before. ETF expert Eric Balchuna even writes game over, and we need to take a look at that too. But first, let's take a look at Donald Trump. Eric Trump and Michael Saylor, what this is all about, what is currently going on here. Because a lot of people have been speculating for a long time about why the Trump folks haven't met with Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor keeps talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve, making all these projections that the US could pay off its debts by 2040 if they buy a certain amount of Bitcoin. If you buy 1 million Bitcoin, then you're still not completely debt-free. If you buy 4 million Bitcoin, then you could be completely debt-free. He's doing various analyses and calculations. But there hasn't been an official meeting here yet, and there's been a lot of speculation, and now this meeting has taken place, and it's epic. And it is also clearly confirmed that this is not about cats or any, let's say, side stories, but rather about Bitcoin in plain language. Here, Eric Trump posts, 2 friends, 1 passion, Bitcoin. It's clear that they're talking about Bitcoin, and Eric Trump has already spoken out, standing firmly behind his father, Donald Trump, and has made it clear that, hey, Donald Trump is going to push Bitcoin forward massively. I'm going to push Bitcoin here too. We're going to make America the #1 Bitcoin hotspot together, and for that, we need all the smart people on board. That means the Trump team and Trump's advisory team are getting bigger and bigger. More and more big players are coming together here, all with the incentive to pump the Bitcoin price. I'm saying this again, they really have the incentive to pump the Bitcoin price because Eric Trump, Donald Trump, Michael Saylor, the whole Trump advisory team from Vivek Ramaswamy to, what are their names, Howard Lutnick and so on, they all have massive Bitcoin holdings. That means they all have a vested interest in pushing Bitcoin forward. Even now, the new SEC chief, the Treasury Secretary in the US, they all have massive bags, and they have the incentive to pump the Bitcoin price up. And now they have the GigaChat on their team, and Michael Saylor could potentially be like the blueprint for the US because Michael Saylor has done something on a small scale that the US could do on a larger scale in a slightly modified form if things escalate. The question now is in what form such a strategic Bitcoin reserve will come about. I have to be honest, I checked Polymarkets earlier, and the probabilities of a strategic Bitcoin reserve coming about don't look that great right now. Let me take a quick look at where the chart is. Here we have it, and Trump wants to create a Bitcoin reserve in the first 100 days, and right now the probability is at 25. That means the betting markets don't see it as very likely. The Bitcoin scene is really escalating now because this meeting has taken place, but at Polymarkets, where real money is on the line, people betting with their own cash, the odds don't look that positive. And that makes me a bit concerned again because Polymarket has always had a very, very good track record in the past. Michael Saylor also commented on the whole thing, quoted it again, and presented his bullish case. Here again, he also says, almost everyone is underrating Bitcoin's bright future. And now the question is if Eric Weiss might have inside info. Could be he dropped it, but Eric Weiss influenced Michael Saylor. He writes the future is crazier than imagined. So the question is if he knows something we don't. Bitcoiners know it because the mainstream hasn't figured out Bitcoin will soar. So the question is whether he knows something we don't. We Bitcoiners actually all know it because only the mainstream hasn't figured it out yet that Bitcoin is going to take off. And even if a strategic Bitcoin reserve doesn't come about, Bitcoin will still continue on its path. That's pretty clear. Just as clear as the sun rises in the morning and sets in the evening, it's just as clear now that Bitcoin is going to prevail. Maybe not completely clear, but pretty close to it. This morning, I also made a video about how even people from the Democratic side, like Anthony Scaramucci and some politicians from the Democratic camp, are starting to open up to Bitcoin, and there's even support for it in the Senate among Democrats. This is explosive with Trump bets on Bitcoin, but there's a risk if the Bitcoin reserve fails, indicating a sell-off. Bitcoin's hype could lead to sell-offs if Trump doesn't act, unraveling the narrative. One person shouldn't influence Bitcoin's price like this, but that also means we have a significant risk. Because if the strategic Bitcoin reserve doesn't come about, it clearly indicates that a massive sell-off is potentially looming. All this hype and positive sentiment that's currently being priced into the Bitcoin price could indeed lead to huge sell-offs if Donald Trump doesn't follow through. It might even unravel the whole narrative that's been built up over months. So this is really, really crucial, and usually it's not a good thing for one person to be able to pump the Bitcoin price up or down like this. But I think Trump is now in a position where he might actually have a say in the future of next year's Bitcoin price, whether the Bitcoin price skyrockets or doesn't rise as much. But I think Trump is now at a point in 2021 where he might actually have a say in the future of next year's Bitcoin price. So whether the Bitcoin price skyrockets or doesn't rise as much, whether Donald Trump follows through or not, Bitcoin is very likely to rise in 2025. But with the reserve, it could go up a lot more. And I've watched a ton of prediction videos. What are the predictions for 2025? And almost always, you see that two cases are made. First, there's the standard prediction without a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And then there's the bullish prediction with a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And those usually include Bitcoin prices that are 100, 200, higher than without a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And then something really crazy happened here. Eric Balchunas writes that IBIT, the Blackrock Bitcoin ETF, had the largest outflow ever yesterday, which was 302,300,000. That's about 0.7% of the total assets under management in the IBIT Blackrock ETF. So it wasn't Blackrock that sold, but the customers who sold, and in total it's Bitcoin. We see that the Bitcoin price didn't really react to that. It has remained relatively stable. That's a very, very good sign. Now there is E.G. People like Eric Balchuna are saying things like, game over, it's all over now. But that's obviously meant as a joke. He knows full well that it's not all over, we just have some outflows and stuff like that. But that's always been the case in the past. I remember the first big outflow when Blackrock sold like 300 Bitcoin or something, and everyone freaked out like, wow, Blackrock is selling Bitcoin. Now they've sold like 3,000, and honestly, who cares? They're still going to keep accumulating Bitcoin massively. My prediction is that the Bitcoin ETF inflows this year in 2025 will be higher than in 2024, meaning there will be even more inflows on top of that, and that will definitely boost the Bitcoin price further. We have Michael Saylor's perpetual purchases, we have Blackrock's perpetual purchases, and now we could add the US perpetual purchases. So, in my assessment, things are looking really, really good here, even though we occasionally have some small pullbacks. But as you've seen, the market easily absorbs those, so there's really no reason to worry. What's really bullish here is that LoadNet Garage, co-founder of the ETF Institute, suggests that Bitcoin spot ETFs for creating and redeeming in physical assets will likely be introduced in 2025. Bitcoin ETFs are moving to physical, allowing direct Bitcoin settlements, boosting price and investor interest. Withdrawing Bitcoin is crucial. Inability is a red flag. Today is Proof of Keys Day, celebrating Bitcoin's Genesis block. And what's being planned now, and we've already heard this confirmed by several people from the SEC, is that there are also plans for physical Bitcoin ETFs. This means you can settle Bitcoin directly with Bitcoin. You no longer have to go through the cash route. In my opinion, this is yet another catalyst for the Bitcoin price, because it suddenly makes things a lot easier. You can just withdraw your Bitcoin from the Bitcoin ETF and transfer it to your hardware wallet, which is super bullish and could really open up the investment case for Bitcoin ETFs to more investors. It's just more interesting and easier to handle Bitcoin. I mean, it's always like this. You want to buy something where you can also make an exit. It's like with some exchanges where you can buy certificates on Bitcoin or something, but you can't really withdraw the Bitcoin. And in my opinion, that's always a red flag. If you can't actually withdraw the Bitcoin, then it's best not to sign up on those platforms and buy any certificates. Today is Proof of Keys Day, celebrating Bitcoin's Genesis block. Secure Bitcoin with a hardware wallet. Withdraw from platforms and ETFs. See link for Trezor wallet discount. BitcoinHotel is now in effect. And that's why I highly recommend getting yourself a hardware wallet. Think about withdrawing your Bitcoin holdings, because that's what you do on Proof of Keys Day. You check whether your Bitcoin security is good or not. So you withdraw your Bitcoin from the platforms. You withdraw your Bitcoin from the ETFs. And I'll drop a link below to a Trezor hardware wallet. You can even get up to 10% off the purchase with the code BitcoinHotel. That way you'll be super secure. and you'll be sure that you have no platform risk, no ETF risk, and if the in-kind ETFs come through, then you can actually withdraw your Bitcoin directly from the Bitcoin ETFs to your Trezor hardware wallet, which would be amazing. FTX payouts start today, totaling 16 billion over 60 days. This liquidity is expected to flow back into Bitcoin. It's very likely that a significant amount will flow back into the Bitcoin market. We now have the FTX payouts starting today, which total 16 billion, and these payments will take place over the next 60 days. This will all happen in dollars or stablecoins. I'm not entirely sure, but dollars and stablecoins might be considered the same. It's expected that a lot of this liquidity will flow back into the Bitcoin market. So it's 16 billion. That's not an outrageous amount, but it's also not nothing. And you also have to know that it won't come all at once, but rather spread out over the 60 days. That means if there's more selling pressure in the next 60 days, then it's likely that it will just be absorbed by the liquidity from FTX. That doesn't mean all the money is going into Bitcoin. I mean, some of those dollars might flow into other assets or get spent or who knows what. And many dollars will also flow into Bitcoin, some even into shitcoins. And how much of that 16 billion will actually go into Bitcoin? Whether it's 6, 7, 8, 10, or even more, like 14 or something, nobody really knows. But for sure, this is another positive sign, and we're seeing more and more sources and, let's say, doors opening for capital to flow into Bitcoin through various vehicles. If you don't have any Bitcoin yet, I'm going to drop a link below for you to buy Bitcoin, the absolute easiest way to get Bitcoin in Europe. It's super simple. You can also get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin with the code BitcoinHotel. So that's an absolute recommendation. See you, take care. Peace out.